Hiya folks. This video is entitled The Real Purpose or the Purpose of Mummification. So what we get, currently, purpose of mummification is, it's always, the kings and the queens, or the royalty or the high priest or whatever, they would get mummified to preserve their body, because that's just the royal tradition, and that's what they did. And then a little bit more advanced version of that, or to add on to it, is that because when they go on their journey, when their soul leaves their body and they go on their journey, then they'll, then if their body's mummified, they go to, whatever, it's just all nonsense. Okay. The real purpose of mummification back in the ancient world, for real, originally, was when a person reaches a certain level of development, they're able to go on, they're able to do soul travel. Okay, now, you'll hear the most basic form of this explained today as astral travel. And then even this guy, Drunvalo Melchizedek, came out with this book where he talked about that the constituency of the human soul can travel through different dimensions, up to 12 of them, in what he called octaves. Now that's more realistic as to soul travel. So what mummification was actually for. So you say you had a person that had achieved a certain level of development into, for lack of a better term, the mysteries, the initiations. That's pretty accurate, because you have to go through some type of education and training and practice to achieve a certain level. So you have to see that all the things you've learned, and you have to put them into practice. So that's legitimate. Okay. So once they achieve a certain level of development, they're able to soul travel. Now, could they soul travel while in the body? Could they just leave the body and come back? Yes. But they can't do it for extended periods of time because their body needs sustenance. So the physical organic body needs sustenance and stuff. So, and sometimes they're going to be gone for hundreds of years. They're going to go on a soul travel for hundreds of years. So, or even if they only went on soul travel for 3, 4, 5 years, their body needs sustenance, and their bodies would be at a level of development that they could maybe last without sustenance for an extended period of time beyond what we could probably really comprehend, and that would be maybe 2, 3 months. Their body could actually sit there without sustenance for that long, and legitimately, when that soul returns to that body to reanimate it, it would be okay. It would immediately need some maintenance, but it would it would work. But sometimes they will go on journeys for 100 years or something like that, and they have the actual intent of returning to that body. So what would happen is they would mummify the body, and so they would take the organs out of the body, the heart, the brain, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, the gallbladder, blah 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 blah, and they would have a solution that they had made up, and they would put those organs into what was called canopic jars, and so then they would store the organs in a place where they would inside the jars, inside the substance, and in a certain temperature, cooler temperature that they wouldn't spoil or deteriorate, that the organs would. So then they would use this technology. Now there's 2 books that you've heard of that explain this particular process, this technology. And it's one of the books is called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the other one is called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the true interpretation of those titles for those books would be the book of the manual of what's in between. So you probably heard the explanation of it's the book of what is in the duat. So the duat means the in-between. So, and the in-between is without a doubt the astral plane. Okay. So, so you have to know how to navigate that. And so we live in a 3rd dimension. But according to Drumville and Melchizedek, there would be 12 octaves within this dimension. And then, according to Drumville and Melchizedek, there would be 12 octaves in each of the 12 different planes. So, if you read this book by Annie Besant, who was one of the founders, along with Alice Bailey, of the Lucis Trust, the Lucifer or the Lucis Trust, and Lucifer only means it just means the light generically. Okay, the light. All right. So Annie Besant wrote this book entitled The Ancient Wisdom. So now if you read that book, and you read Drumville and Melchizedek's books of the explanation of octave travel, you're getting somewhere. So the way Besant explained it is that the highest level of this dimension, the 3rd dimension, resonates to the lowest level of the next dimension higher. So, in other words, so the highest level of our dimension, the 3rd dimension, resonates to the lowest level of the 4th dimension. And this is why it's so important. The book of what's in the duat, or the book of how to navigate the duat, is so important because the lower astral plane. Let's back up just a little bit. There's a book called The Emerald Tablet of Thoth. So Thoth, the Emerald Tablet of Thoth, the Atlantean Egyptian. Okay. And this book has many interpretations that people try to come up with. But all it is it's one gigantic exorcism manual. So there used to be entities that could occupy our dimension that shouldn't be here. They're not compatible with us. And they're predatory, and they're predatory in such a way that we can't really deal with them. The average everyday person can't really deal with them. You have to be an adept sorcerer, or an adept wizard, or an adept magician, or whatever. You have to be very adept at dealing with these entities. Now, we call them demons or whatever, reptilians or whatever you want to call it, but that's just the case. So, the Book of Thoth, the Atlantean Egyptian, is a book that explains how these entities that we call demons, powerful motherfuckers, were expelled from this dimension. Okay, and so it's just really one gigantic exorcism, man. So, getting back to the Book of the Dead. So the book of the what's in the duat, it's a manual. It's an explanation on how to deal with and how to get past the lower astral plane. That's really all you got to get past is the lower astral plane. The lower astral plane is where all the bullshit. It's where what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious is. Because Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, rightly so, the devil. And Rudolf Steiner, the world's greatest educator that ever lived, explained that in the demon world, you have it's hierarchical, so we already know all that. But there are aspects of it, the hierarchy, that we're not aware of because we just simply aren't. So we think that Satan and Lucifer, we think that Satan is Lucifer, and they're the same thing, and that's the ultimate king. That's the ultimate, demon. We even call Satan and Lucifer the devil, but it's not really accurate. And Rudolf Steiner, the world's greatest educator who ever lived, founder of the Waldorf, basically, mainly most founder of the Waldorf school, the Waldorf education system, which is based on creativity before analytical learning. He actually did a sculpture, and he said that in the hierarchy, the way it works is that basically Lucifer means the light, Satan means the darkness, Satan means the darkness, but they have there's actually another demon who is over them, and that demon's name is Ahriman, and Ahriman is the actual real devil. And now if you look at some of these videos or pictures on Google or YouTube, and you type in Rudolf Steiner, Ahriman, 9/11, you'll see that when the buildings were imploding, when they were hit by the planes on 9/11, that when one of the explosions occurred, the likeness of Ahriman showed up in the smoke. Now, if you look at it, you look at the sculpture that Steiner did of Ahriman, they're the exact same. Okay. And it's a known fact amongst esotericists that the astral plane can be accessed through explosions, as well as through atom splitting, so nuclear activity. So that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why the demon world so loves nuclear energy, because through nuclear activity, they're able to access this world. And you know that also from CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, when they're constantly trying to split atoms and stuff like that, or create stars, or manipulate the source field. They say they're looking for the God particle or whatever, but what they're actually trying to do is they're trying to find a dimension where white supremacy won. They're trying to find a place. They're trying to find a dimension where white supremacy won, and so they can merge it with this dimension, because white man is smart enough to know that his time's pretty much up. He's going to lose, and he's calculating. He's smart enough to calculate the fact that that his time is up. White supremacy's time is over, and we're right now in the middle of crushing it. So the lower astral plane is where the demons are. That's where they live at. And one of the reasons, like, say for instance, like if you ever read Helena Blavatsky's books, she wrote a book called Letters from Hindustan, and in that book, she was in India, and she was hanging out with the fakirs, Fakirs. Now you only know the fakirs as people that do all these parlor tricks in the middle of the park or something like that, where they'll sit there and look like they're levitating, or they'll stick a needle through their jaw, come out the other side, or they'll stick a knife through their hand, or blah 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 blah. Right? But the real advanced fakirs, the ones that live in the jungles of Hindustan, are experts at conjuring demons from the lower astral plane, the powerful ones. And she actually witnessed it. They did a blood sacrifice. They used that blood, then they did their ritual, and they manifested about an 8.5 foot tall demon right in front of her. Literally physical demon right in front of her. So another thing, I had a friend of mine ask me, why is it that women are so in folklore, why are they so affected and so have such an inclination to the demonic? And that's the reason why. It's because that women have a period. So when they have their period, they're more susceptible to interaction with the lower astral plane because of the blood and the fact that they are animated by a soul spirit. So see, there's that compatibility right there. So that's the reason why. And that's also metaphorical for, you know, Adam and Eve, and Adam and the serpent, I mean, Eve and the serpent, and blah 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 blah. Okay. It's partly metaphorical for that as well. Okay. And so the book of What is in the Duat, or the book of the dead, or you could actually flip it and call it the Book of Life. It doesn't really matter. But the two that are the most known are the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or What's in the Duat. What's in the in-between. What's in the lower astral plane before you get to the higher plane. Okay. And that's what you need to navigate, because if you go there consciously and you don't know how to navigate it, you can get trapped in it. You have to be because you're in the most predatory environment that there is, because that's the demon world, and you can just be tricked. You can be enslaved there. The Toltecs even have stories of the inorganic beings where you can go there and they'll lure you into their lair, and then you're trapped and you can't get out. They'll lure your soul into it, and they'll just trap it in there, and you can never get out of it. You know, I mean, like by our years, it might take you a million years to finally escape out of there. See? And then you still have to go back through the cycle of reincarnation on the earth that you didn't ever complete, or whatever. So there's also other books that do give explanations of this, and these books are actually a little more advanced than the Egyptian or Tibetan book. And those would be the books that you would get out of South America or Mexico. But the white scholars stuff's so advanced that the white scholars can't decipher the language, they can't interpret the hieroglyphs, they can't interpret it. So they simply just, they don't talk about it. They've got one document that they call the Po View, and they talk about that one. And and they try to act like, oh, we have a bead all over it. We're all over the Po View, or whatever. It says POL. So yeah, POL, VU, or a space VU, or VUH, or whatever. Anyway, so, but there's much more written in the stone in South America, and the Yucatan. There's much more intricate explanations for all this stuff, right? But the languages are so old and are so intricate and they're so advanced until the white scholars really just can't decipher it. And you know how it is. If the white world can't decipher it, then it must not be so. Whatever. So, but the white world is actually an impediment to true understanding of spiritual matter, for real soul technology. Okay. So. I mean, like for instance, how the white world, they know everything, right? And so down in South America, right today, to this day, right, there are places that white people just simply cannot go, and if they get too far into those areas, they'll never get out. And why is that? Because there's deadly insects You saw that movie King Kong, right? The one Peter Jackson directed with Jack Black and Naomi Watts. And you saw those insects and stuff like that, right? So that's a really good metaphor for what I'm telling you right now. So, like, all you gotta do, and this has happened so many times in history, it's unbelievable. All you gotta do is go down to the jungles of South America, get deep down in there, and tell them you're looking for El Dorado. Tell them to point you the way to El Dorado. And what's going to wind up happening is you keep going. You're going to get to the point to where you'll start to encounter insects who are quite similar to the ones that you saw in the movie King Kong. That was directed by Peter Jackson. And they're highly predatory. And they're deadly. I mean, they are deadly. And you're not going to stop them. You're not going to escape them, and you ain't going to stop them. And the thing is like us, Zapotecs, golden Zapotecs, Indian, we could walk straight past them and they won't do anything to us. But if a white person comes down there, so it's twofold. If your intent is incorrect, you could be a Zapotec and they'll attack you and kill you. If you're white, you better be Emmanuel Swedenborg or somebody, or you better be St. Francis of Assisi or something. Other than that, you get attacked and they're going to kill you. Okay. Well, let's just say, for instance, you got lucky somehow you got lucky and got past them, which you're not going to, but let's just say you did. Then there's animals you have never seen in your life that you cannot imagine. You can't imagine. I ain't gonna try to explain them to you. And they would do you in. And the reason why they would do you in, because you have no inventory of what they are in the first place. So you have no inventory on how to deal with them. Okay? Because you've never seen them. And then let's just say for some weird reason, which ain't gonna happen, but you were to get past them. Then you have to deal with what's called the jaguar priest. Now, first of all, there's no words to describe a Toltec sorcerer. You cannot put it into words. Toltec sorcerers are invincible. Period. An adept Toltec sorcerer living in an environment like that, everything that you would come up with would be child's play for them to deal with. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you do, what you come down there with. They would be able to deal with you. You come down there with military equipment. It wouldn't matter. You wouldn't, first of all, you wouldn't get it off, and you wouldn't make it out. Period. And, but then you have to deal with the jaguar priest. So what's a jaguar priest? Okay, so imagine the greatest Toltec sorcerer that ever lived. And then this motherfucker is nuts to the 500th power. I can't explain it to you. I can't explain to you what a jaguar priest is capable of. Simply can't tell you. There's no word that can explain it. That's what you have to deal with. They can not only bend, they can bend time, they can bend reality, they could change a tree into an ocean right before your very eyes. That's what it really be. You would never be able to deal with it. See? So that's the reason why, and these people are the reason why, because it's a Zapotec planet. And these people are the reason why white supremacy simply can't win. It never will win because they'll never tolerate it. See? So, because it's our planet. See? So, their explanations in the rocks, in the hieroglyphs, in those places, like Tikal. This is the place you can access with no problem. Tikal, Tula, Piedras Negras, that's Guatemala. Tula is South America. It might even be in the Yucatan. Anyway, all those old, you know, Chichen Itza, Tenochtitlan, which is ancient Mexico City, all those different places down there. If you knew how to read the hieroglyphs in the stones and in the rocks, you go inside the temples and you knew how to read the hieroglyphs, they would be telling you how to travel through the duat. A lot of it will be telling you that. And the reason why is because when the white race, or when the Europeans came to assault the Indians in South America, if you notice, a lot of the Indians just seem to escape out the clear blue. Just out of the clear blue. Where the hell did they go? You know, you got Mayan villages and Anasazi villages and Pueblo villages full of people that just out the clear blue, they just escaped being annihilated by the Europeans. Now, how did that happen? How do they just? I mean, some of them, the food on they still have the dinner plates were still set, and they just all of a sudden they're gone. That's what they would do. They could just go into the temples, or they could go into some of the sites, and the instructions on how to get through the duat were written, and then they would just utilize the technology. What's the technology? Well, you had two types. You had the one type that they could just simply do it. They could do what's called open up a cosmic slit, or you could call it they could open up a cosmic vagina. They could just open it up, stand around that spot. They could just open it up and step right through it and birth themselves into another dimension. That's something that Whitey just cannot comprehend, cannot get it. He cannot ever get it through his head because it's too impossible. But that's the case. Some of them could just do that. That's how adept they were as sorcerers. Then some of them, they weren't that adept, but the technology, the sorcerers had built the technology to save, so that the people could do it, and some of that technology is called a kiva. What's a kiva? So a kiva. Now the white people have done the measurements of a kiva, and they know that the kiva have consistent mathematical characteristics. And back then, the Spaniards and the Europeans, that type of math, that type of advanced mathematics wasn't prevalent then, so they wouldn't know nothing about it. But now, the white people have, come up and they figured out that in the kivas, K-I-V-A, kivas, that there's a consistent mathematical configurations and there seems to be consistent mathematical configurations that center around 19.47 degrees arctangent on a sphere. That's true. Now, what they come up with to say that is, they call it tetrahedral geometry. That's what they call it. Or they call it verticular fluid flow. Verticular geometry. And so, like when you look at Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, or the planet Saturn, or the planet Uranus, or the planet Venus, or whatever, you always see these vortexes, on the, like, especially Jupiter. That'd be the best one to look at. You see these vortexes. What is that? What is that? See, and it's always where does it occur at on the sphere? 19.47 degrees, 19.5 degrees. In other words, gravity. 19.47 degrees. Arctangent. Okay, that's the vortex. So that's for interdimensional travel. So that tells you that Jupiter can be traveled to. The soul can travel to Jupiter. The soul can travel to Venus. The soul can travel to any of these planets in our solar system. Edgar Cayce said that. He said it all the time that we go to different spheres for different forms of development. See? So, but you have to know how to get through the duat. Alright? That's important because you're dealing with highly predatory, the demon world. So that's what those books are for. So and so the mummification is just to preserve the body so that the soul, with 21 grams of the soul, can coherently, consciously, can with awareness, with self-awareness, get through the do-eye. Have a body to come back to once it goes on journeys to different planes. Now, where do the souls go? Well, they can go into the future, here on Earth. They can go into the past, here on Earth. Now, the way we set it up is the white people, not Caucasians, white people, can't go into the past. We don't allow it. We let them go into the future all they want. We don't allow them to go into the past. There's a reason for that, and I ain't going to tell you why. So if any planet that you see that has a vortex, including the sun, it also has reticular flow. All of them do. Mercury, Mars, the Earth, whatever the planets are. You know what I'm saying? They all have it. Even the moons have it. So they can all be traveled to. And they can all be traveled to by the 21 grams of the soul. And it can go there, and then whatever is the physical constituents of that planet, there's life there. We simply can't see it because we're not that physical constituent. However, if you are advanced enough to be able to travel to one of those places with your soul, then you'll access it through the vortex. And with the Zapotec people, when they the Mayans, the Anasazi, the Pueblos, blah 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 blah, when they left through the vortexes, so you had the ones that could just do it. Then you had the ones that had to use the technology, or the Kiva. So the Kivas have, and the white people have confirmed this, they have consistent tetrahedral geometric mathematics, which means they have vortexes. So that's how the Indians would travel through the vortex and into another dimension. But they had to know at least how to. They don't have to know. I mean, you can still, if you're pure enough, you can get past the demons and shit. You know what I'm saying? But it's better, it's probably better to know. It's probably better to know in an educational sense how to do it. So you have these books, or you have the information somewhere written in stone. And but what the Indians did, which is different, is they dreamed up their own world that have their own physical constituents and characteristics that are out of the capability of any white person to ever comprehend it. So they made it so they made their own cognitive system, which is even more detailed and more real actually than the white world. And they did that so they could escape being annihilated at the hands of the white person, so that they could eventually come back and claim the planet. And that's what's going on now. People that are going to reclaim the planet are starting to be reincarnated right now. And some of them will come back through the vortex. Some of them will come back through the megalithic sites. Some of them will just materialize on the megalithic sites and you'll never know it. Some of them will materialize at the bottom of a lake as a fish, crawl out the water and turn into a human. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So, and you know that all you can do is be a student of Velikovsky to know that species can just occur. They can simply just occur. See, this is what white don't understand. White can't get that. See, so some of them do, but they're not the bad ones. The ones that are able to comprehend that are not the bad ones. Those are the good ones, like Wallace Thornhill or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So back to Egyptian, which is really Cometian. mummification. And it's happened. It's known to have happened in in Central Asia and all over. Asia Minor, Cappadocia. Different places. So it's not just exclusive. Persia. That stuff. It's not just exclusive to Egypt or whatever. So they go on this long journey, and they go into the future, they go into the past, they go into their planets or whatever. And so some of these journeys will actually develop that soul even more. Okay. And Edgar Cayce talked about that. So when you go on journeys to spheres, to different spheres, you go there for the purpose of soul development. Okay. And so some of them will come, when they come back, they will be so advanced. This is back into Egypt or whatever, that they wouldn't even have to. They could go back into their body. So all the priests would be there with the rituals, and they'd know blah 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 that they were coming back and blah blah blah. They would, their 21 grams of soul could reanimate that body. Some of them were so advanced that they didn't even need all the organs anymore. Like sometimes they didn't need a brain no more to work properly. Sometimes they didn't need a heart. Sometimes they didn't need lungs. Sometimes they could operate with just the endocrine system, or even just components of the endocrine system, and reanimate the body fully and reanimate. So I know all this sounds incredulous to the white mind, of course, to the analytical mind, to the to the European mind, but that's the reason why Rudolf Steiner was the greatest educator who ever lived, because he tried to tell white people who's like analytical learning, fact-based learning is not the actual way you should learn. The way you should learn is you should learn creatively first, and then use facts and use analytical learning. But instead, we flipped it, where analytical learning comes first, and then it's just and then we've got the magic mind, the creative mind is like we'll use Disney to capture it, so it'll capture your imagination. See what I'm saying? So we live in a system where the imagination is enslaved, or creativity is enslaved, and it's enslaved to it's inverted. It's enslaved to the analytical mind, which it should be the other way. Creativity should come first, and that should be the master, and that should enslave the analytical mind. That should be the master-slave situation. But we don't have that. So, but the positive aspect of overall what I'm saying is that's the reason why white supremacy will lose, because it relies on the mechanical world instead of the creative world. So, but that is the purpose of mummification. So you go on a journey. You might go for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, whatever. And so we're going all the way. I'm only going to take this back to about 260,000 BCE. So you think about that. So if you're mummified at 255,000 BCE, and you want to go on a 5,000 year journey, you're going to come back. It's still going to be 250,000 BCE. You could have went all kinds of places. You could have visited different planets. You could have visited different planets inhabited by people. There's 250 planets in our galaxy that are inhabited by people just like us, for sure. With the Zapotec technology, with the megalithic pyramid and temple site technology, you could have went to all of them. There's just so much to it. I mean, but that's the basic purpose of mummification. That was the real purpose of it, just to preserve the body so that 21 grams, the soul can go on journeys. The Book of the Dead is a manual on how to get past the demon world, And pretty much it. All right. Thank you very much, folks.